you saw the very best players the entire country has to offer, and you saw it throughout the course of the weekend.
He's growing, he's improving at such a rapid rate. He's going to be a very good player.
This guy's a cross between Sean Marion and Lamar Odom. He's a 6'8" lefty, a high-level athlete, but also got a little bit of point-forward skills in him as he can handle and pass the ball extremely well. At this point, they are simply the standard by which everyone else is judged in prep school basketball. He's considering the likes of Michigan, North Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas.
Welcome back to this virtual episode of the Upside Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Finkelstein, and this is the third part in a mini-series as we continue to dive into issues of racial injustice in this country and how they are impacting sport and the basketball world in particular. After first having on Dr. Scott Brooks and then Missouri head coach Cuonzo Martin, this is a bit of a different episode. We have Pittsburgh head coach Jeff Capel, Marquette head coach Steve Wojciechowski. And it's an interesting perspective because these are two friends who played together at Duke and then coached on the same staff under Coach K for years. So they've observed a lot of the same experiences, but potentially from unique perspectives. So coaches, thank you both so much for being here.
Appreciate you having me.
So
yeah, thanks for having us.
You know, I'm going to get right to it because I want to give you both. You have both been leaders, I think, in your, Coach Wojo was one of the first white coaches I saw to post something on social media. And I thought it was a powerful statement on your Instagram on Friday. Coach Capel, you were someone who, when I began to do research on this last Wednesday about guests I could have and who Black coaches look to for leadership in the industry, you and Cuonzo were the two names that I kept hearing. You know, as I said, who's this generation's John Thompson or Nolan Richardson or John Chaney? It was Jeff Capel and Cuonzo Martin, and I think that the leadership you've shown on social media in the last week or so has backed that up. So jumping right into it, just do you two as friends? Do you guys have conversations about race now? Have you had them in the past? I mean, what is that dynamic like with you guys?
Well, you want to go? You want me to go?
Age before beauty. Yeah, Jeff and I have always had an open enough relationship where we've been able to dive into what most people would consider sensitive subjects or uncomfortable discussions, and certainly race has been a big part of that. Jeff is someone that I look to for advice as I try to lead my own program and take a perspective of most of the guys I coach who are young Black student athletes. And look, I never have had to walk in the shoes of a young Black student athlete or a Black male. I try my best to understand their perspective, but having a friend like Jeff who I can bounce ideas off of in a very real and authentic way and get honest feedback has been invaluable for me as I've tried to learn about how to be a better leader and lead the guys in our program.
Yeah, the piggyback off of that, Wo and I have known each other since I think I was 19 and he was 18. And so you have a relationship that's incredibly close. I think there's a genuine love I know there's a genuine love there for each other. Our families, all these different things like that. When you have that allows you to have very difficult conversations and to touch on everything because there's love there. There's genuine understanding. There's genuine care. And so we have had these discussions when we were in college. And since then, it's been great to have a friend, like a true friend in this profession that you can lean on, that you can talk to about certain things, pertaining to the profession, but also pertaining to leadership and different things like that. So I'm incredibly appreciative that I have him as a sounding board, and I'm incredibly grateful that he feels the same towards me.
So let's start back. Yeah, I'm sorry.
One of the things I would mention, you mentioned my Instagram post, and the first guy I thought of to bounce it off of, to gauge the response that it could potentially provoke, was Jeff. Obviously I was horrified, disgusted by George Floyd and the video and everything that's occurred afterwards. But I reached out to Jeff to give me guidance and have him understand kind of how I was feeling and what would be a good way to articulate those feelings and put it out there, because I wanted to be a leader as a white male coach in a profession that coaches largely young Black men.
Yeah. And, Adam, one of the things that was, interesting about it, I wasn't surprised when he reached out. And when I read what he wrote, I thought it was beautiful. And because I know him, I knew it was from the heart. I knew it wasn't something that someone else wrote,
right,
or something that he was just putting out there because he felt pressure. I knew that it was from the heart, and it was absolutely beautiful what he wrote. As a friend, one of the things I said to him was, look, understand when you put this out, like, you're going to get some stuff.
Yeah.
And his initial reaction was, F that.
Right.
And I was like, look, I know you. Like, I understand that I know you, but as a friend, I want to tell you that just so you're prepared for some of the backlash that you're probably going to get.
And, I initially smiled there because I had the same discussion with friends of mine, Black friends of mine. And I called coaches on both of your staffs to kind of, in the very early days, to say, hey, what can I do? I've got this platform. I want to do it. And I heard a similar message from those guys in that, understand that you're going to get criticized no matter what you do. But ultimately, like, if this is the road you want to go down, and however, so I just think that's a theme here for people who look like me and look like, Coach Wojo, who want to do good, who have to say, you know what, we're on this side of it. And that's, so as I said, I think Coach Wojo was one of the very first white coaches I saw who did it, not because of protests or riots, but did it because of George Floyd's death, if you start to timestamp all this stuff.
Yeah.
You mentioned that race was, something that you guys, and stop me if I'm wrong on any of this, please, but back to your playing days, how often or at what, do either of you remember the first time it became a subject that had to be discussed either privately or amongst your teammates as a whole?
I'll go first with this one. I don't remember a situation, to be honest with you, where it was a particular instance. Certainly when we were in school together, I think the one thing I remember with race was the OJ trial.
Yeah.
But in getting to know my teammate, when Steve got there, at times we were roommates on the road. So I just wanted to get to know him.
Right.
And, understanding his background. He's from Baltimore, in the Baltimore area, and understanding, for him in this sport, how he became such a really good player, how he got a passion for basketball. And, I remember conversations of where he would go and play, who he would measure himself against.
Right.
And a lot of times he's the only white guy there. And it's his mom taking him, taking him to these places, stuff that his parents told him, what he would have to, how he would measure himself as a player. And immediately I gained, and, I already had respect for him, but as I got to know him more, not just him as a basketball player, but to know him, my respect and my admiration, to be quite frank, my love for him grew even more from those conversations.
Well, and if I could, before Coach Wojo responds, if I could, because Coach Capel, you talk about family history, and I think everybody knows the basketball history of your family, with your brother's playing and coaching career, and of course your father's coaching career. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have, is it a grandparent who's a very active civil rights activist?
Yeah, he was. My grandfather, my dad's father, helped integrate North Carolina. He was very, very active. He was into politics. He was a businessman, ended up, owning his own business. But his greatest thing was that, well, his greatest claim to fame from people's standpoint is the fact that he was very instrumental with helping to integrate North Carolina. The thing that was so amazing to me as I got older and I started to understand the world a little bit more was he's one of the few people I've ever met. I never heard him say anything negative about anyone. And as I got older and I started to learn more about him and learn more about what he did and the things that he had to endure, the things that my father saw happen to his father, it was even more amazing to me how he never had anything negative to say about anyone. Amen. Because of the things that he experienced. And so that's the family I grew up in. My dad, when I was little and growing up, he was a high school coach, became a college coach, and he had some sort of fame like Steve and I have now. And so you go and you do a clinic or you're somewhere and someone wants your autograph. And I remember my dad used to always write on it, help others. Wow. And I remember as I kind of got of age and you're starting to question and figure things out, I remember asking him, like, why do you do that? And he talked about like what his family was about. And that's how you make the world better, is about helping others.
That's an incredible context. Coach Wojo, I will refer that initial question back to you. When when you first got to Duke and you first met Coach Capel, do you remember as a teammate the first time? I mean, the OJ trial I think is significant because major historical events tend to lead to the conversation. It's the Will Smith post. None of this stuff is new. It's just being recorded. So when people bring awareness to it, it hopefully increases the dialogue and understanding around it. But do you remember any such issues as a player?
Yes, I do. But before I get into that, one of the things that in the time that Jeff and I spent together at Duke, the Capel family, and I'm so happy that we were able to talk about Jeff's grandfather is like royalty down there, and somebody that didn't grow up in North Carolina, who was coming from the Baltimore area. I was always struck by the class, the humility, and the care which every interaction I had with every member of the Capel family, it just struck me, and I love that about them. And it's no question had a incredibly huge impact, not only on Jeff's life, but anybody that's come in contact with that family. Mm-hmm. In terms of the major social issues going on, obviously you mentioned the OJ trial, and certainly I think it captured the attention of the entire country, and we were no different as college student athletes. I think we all watched it. I think there were if you went back to the locker room at that time, there were probably different interpretations, if I'm being real, of what just happened. And the great thing about a college basketball, and I tell my guys this all the time, is that when the game of basketball and the basketball in general is used correctly, it has magic in it, and its greatest magic is in its ability to connect. When you're in a locker room and have a chance to understand that there was a certain group of guys, there were guys who looked at it as a victory, like OJ, the way the trial ended as a victory, and then there were other guys in our locker room that thought he was getting away with stuff. And you had open and real conversations, and not all of them were agreeable, and so those conversations are invaluable. And that's where sport and basketball in particular gives you a platform to be able to speak your mind and your heart and understand other people's perspective. And so I think the OJ trial was a huge part of that. I mean, we also, during our time at Duke, Tupac was shot. You know, Biggie was murdered. Bill Clinton was reelected, and certainly I think in a lot of respects he's been viewed as somebody that has had the back of Black America. And so there was, OJ is probably the most high profile, but there was a lot of different events that you would have discussions about in that locker room, in that safe space, that I don't think the general public had.
Right. No. Yeah.
Or had the circumstances or in the environment to have in a safe way where you could express your feelings and your perspective and have a healthy dialogue, even though it was uncomfortable. And that's something I think both of us are trying to continue to do as leaders of our own program now, not as players.
And that's, I think that when I was a senior in high school, the OJ trial happened, and it was a predominantly white, small Connecticut town. And it was only very recently that a friend of mine pointed out, you talk about the victory. Well, the victory wasn't just acquittal. And again, stop me at any time if I'm wrong, but the acquittal was someone who beat the system that had been beating them for so long. Does that properly articulate that perspective, Coach Capel?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember when the chase happened, I think we were at a team meal. It was at Kyoto's. I don't know if Will remembers Kyoto's, but we were there. And there was the Knicks and the Rockets finals, and that was interrupted for that. And then, I remember where I was the day of the verdict. I was in class, and I remember there was a black guy that got up and went out to class. I think he went to go and to see what the verdict was. And, he came back in and he said in the class, like, he was found not guilty. And it was interesting seeing their reaction, because all the black people were excited and happy, and the majority of the white people were pissed. But I think it was that was, shortly after, it wasn't that long after the Rodney King, beating and trial with that, where all the officers were acquitted. And obviously there had been a lot more before that. And so I do think that's what that was. It's, finally a black man is getting off, so to speak.
And it's, in retrospect, I like to use these podcasts as chances to grow. And Coach Wojo said something, some people viewed it as somebody getting away with something. Other people viewed it as a victory. In retrospect, is it possible for it to be both? That's kind of the way I frame it internally in my head. But even if he was, is it potentially possible for it to be both? Could he have gotten off, but it could have still been symbolic of something in a different way?
Well, I think, my opinion with that is that I think what it shows in general is just how flawed and screwed up the system is. And so, what black people have wanted for so long is just to be able, for things to be fair and for things to be just. You say liberty and justice for all.
Right.
I think throughout the years, as black people, you didn't feel that way. And whether that was justice or not, I have no idea. I wasn't there. I'm not going to pretend to sit up here and to pontificate on whether he was innocent or guilty. In that moment right there, it felt like finally there's some justice, whether it was or not in that moment. And so I think you're still searching for that. I think, that was 95. The Rodney King thing, I think, was 92. And here we are in 2020, and you're still open for justice. We just witnessed a murder in Minnesota. And again, I haven't been on social media today, but I don't know if those 3 other officers have been arrested yet, because Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please, you finish.
I was going to say that they're accessory. I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't, like if I'm somewhere and Woe and I are together and you, Adam, and I commit a crime, and let's say, Woe is in the car and Adam, you're the driver, most of the times, especially if it's three black guys, then I'm guilty and then you're accessory.
Yeah. I thought, especially when you go back and really watch that tape, as troubling as it is, when you can hear the other officer say he's still talking, so he's fine. And then he stopped talking for 2 minutes. So even by the way in which they were gauging it, not to say that was right in the first place, but even by their measurement system, he wasn't right. They knew it and did nothing. And not did nothing, continued to do what they were doing. So I think that's I struggle with the argument that those other three guys aren't equally guilty. So when this happened, because I do think that parallel is important, it's 20 some odd years later and the same stuff is still going on. What do those, what was your message like to your teams when this first happened? And I guess what I'm trying to get at, I wonder if it was different, because I think in the white community, the word I heard the most was listen. And so I'm wondering if that came through in your messages to your teams, or how you guys chose to address that with your teams right away.
Well, go
ahead. I'll take this one. I think, there was, obviously we were all mortified and horrified, disgusted by it. I was very frank with my team, and, obviously I have two sons, and, I said right away, I said, look, first of all, I didn't grow up black. I don't know, I have not personally had the criminal justice system feel like where I've been taken advantage of from it. I don't worry if my son goes out for a jog, if he's going to return home. I don't have to think about whether if my son's wearing a hooded sweatshirt, that could be something that can be life-threatening. I haven't had situations where, I walk down the street and people cross the street to avoid coming close to me because of what I look like. And I was very honest with our players about that. But I followed that up with, tell me your experiences, tell me the things that I need to know so I can help you as human beings first and foremost, and as guys that I love and care about like they're my own sons. I mean, it horrifies me, when guy, because there was very raw and it was very emotional to hear some of our guys speak. Sure. And it horrifies me to hear the things that they fear, that as a white male or a father of two white males, that you don't really have to have discussions about. No. And so, I did mostly listening, and I believed at that time, and I still believe now, that was the right way to approach it.
For me, it started last Wednesday. And I say it started last Wednesday. We do a Zoom every Wednesday with our team. And last Wednesday, normally we'll have an activity or you have someone speak or something like that. And we did none of that. It was just, talking. Now, for us, we talk about stuff all the time because as a black coach, I feel like it's my responsibility to help these guys understand how to navigate in this world. We had an incident my first year here, right here in Pittsburgh, with Antoine Rose, a 16-year-old kid that was shot by a cop, right up the street, from where we are. And so, unfortunately, this wasn't anything new. I think this was different, though. And for me, last Wednesday, I actually did a lot of the talking, and it was really from the standpoint of, and it was kind of like the order of it. You had the Ahmed Arbery thing that happened in Atlanta, and that one was really scary for me from the standpoint of all of our guys are home in the pandemic. They can't get to a gym. They have nowhere to work out. So what are they doing? They're running. They're doing stuff outside. And so when I saw that one, and so when I saw that one, I immediately was in fear because that could have been any one of our guys.
Right.
And then you had the thing up in New York with Amy Cooper.
That's what I almost started to when I was about to raise that issue when you were last spoken. That's what I was going to bring up, because I thought that was, people aren't talking as much about that right now, but that was in some ways.
Well, that's something that happens every day.
But that should have been eye opening for a lot of people. I mean,
and especially if you look at the order of it, because you have that happen, and you hear her, on the phone on that 911 call, and you not only hear, you see it, and you see that it's completely made up. But that's what people think, and then what could have happened to that guy in New York who was bird watching, it happened to George Floyd. And so it was kind of the buildup. And so, my thing to them, and I was very honest with them, like, I have never had a negative interaction with a cop, but it is something that I fear because I know me.
I've heard you
and
say
I
that.
have a really, really hard time being talked to a certain way. And so I fear if I'm ever in that situation. There was one time where I was driving and I got pulled by a cop. Fortunately, my wife was in the car and she heard me getting when she calmed me down. And so I talked to our guys about that. Look, it's not weak. It's not like, you have to get home. That's the bottom line. You have to get home, and then you can let out, you can unleash, you can be angry, you can vent, you can do all those things. But if you're ever in a situation, you have to get home, and you can't react. And then Monday, a couple of days ago, we had a really raw and emotional conversation with our guys. And on that one, I really let them talk. I wanted to hear them because, since last Wednesday, obviously we're in constant communication with our guys individually. And I had guys, man, I have 3 guys right there in the city. And I've had guys that have reached out to me. They want to go protest. They want to do stuff and explain to me. I have some that are afraid to leave their house. They're afraid. I had one kid in Brooklyn tell me, like, Coach, they're killing us for fun. And I'm scared to go outside. And so it's a mixed bag. And you want to be there to listen. You want to be there to try to guide them.
What did you tell the kids who want to go protest? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, here's my thing with this. I think it's our responsibility as coaches is to try to educate and to try to listen to them. I don't think it's our job, unless we know they're putting themselves in harm's way, to say you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. I think it's our job to say to them, okay, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel strongly about it? And if you feel strongly about it, why do you want to do this? But then to explain to them, okay, if you do this, understand, here's some of the repercussions. Here's a way some people can think. People can judge you. People can do this. With the protests, like, understand the danger out there. One of the kids told me, like, look, my dad doesn't want me to do it. He thinks it's too dangerous. What do you think? And I told the kid, I agree with your dad. I understand why you want to do it. I just don't know if right now is the time, because I know you're saying peaceful protest, but a lot of these things don't stay peaceful. They may start out as peaceful, but they don't stay that way. And, I understand your passion and, for wanting to get out there, but I'm not sure right now is the right time for that.
Right. Along those lines, you had a social media post of your own, which I thought was particularly courageous, quoting Dr. King about the source of riots, because I think that there's been misunderstanding that about the feelings about riots, and the riots are being used as people aren't striving to understand them. They're in my estimation, they're striving to use them as another divider. So I just wanted to ask you about that, and that your view as a black head coach, given what you just said about your own player, about the riots in general.
Well, I think when you think about quote unquote riots, you look at them and you think of like, when do they occur?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've occurred throughout history when there's been some sort of, police brutality, or really it's been police brutality, to be honest with you. And people feel like, an injustice has been done. Whether you take Ferguson in 2014, the Watts riots, the Rodney King riot, all of these different things, it's been because of that. And so what Dr. King said, a riot is the voice of the unheard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it, okay, like one of the things I think that's really interesting right now is you see, okay, these peaceful protests, and you've seen these cops kneeling with these protesters, which is beautiful, which is absolutely beautiful. But then you think of a few years ago, how people were in arms with Colin Kaepernick when he was trying to post, to protest peacefully.
Right.
It started with him sitting, and then he went and he had a conversation with someone in the military, and they told them they thought that was disrespectful. You should kneel. And so he did that. And then it was changed. It went from the protest to the flag and him not liking America. And so I think that's one of the things that's happening right now. People want to talk about these quote unquote riots, and they want to take away from what happened to George Floyd, to what happened to Breonna Taylor, to what happened to Ahmaud Arbery and countless other, Black Americans out there. The other thing I've always found fascinating is people, Dr. King, and let's not forget, like, they killed this man,
Right?
Like they murdered him. He was peaceful. He was, or whatever, and he still got killed. And I think he got killed because he could bring people together.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think is something that's positive as we go forward is that I think the younger generation, the generation of the kids that we are coaching right now and younger, they've seen things a little bit different. They've seen things through a different lens. And so I think they are more together. I think they're tired of it. And I think they are the ones that have the greatest opportunity to affect change. I think it's our responsibility as adults, our age group, is to be open-minded and to help teach them and to help point them in the right direction.
You mentioned Colin Kaepernick. What would each of you do if next year your players said to you, I'm going to take a knee when the national anthem is played? Is that something that you've even thought about yet, or
I'm glad you asked, Adam. And Jeff and I haven't talked about this, but I have to be perfectly honest. In thinking back to those times, I think we missed a real opportunity. And as Jeff mentioned so articulately, the narrative was changed. And I think we, from a sports perspective, missed an opportunity. And I've thought a lot about that, just as I've kind of tried to reconcile my thoughts with everything that's going on. Here you had a guy who was peacefully protesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't speak for everyone, but my interpretation across sports was fear that if your players took a knee, what the response would be by the people who view the games, your fans, your fan base. And, I'd be lying if I said that if we as a college basketball community would have embraced that more than we did. And, again, wearing shirts and locking arms and all that kind of stuff, the things that were done, we did. But would that have pushed us further along than where we're at today? So a George Floyd or any of the numerous examples could have been avoided. And if just one could have been avoided, that would be better than the current reality we're living in. I and I don't have an answer for it. But if I'm true to myself, I believe we missed an opportunity. I don't know how Jeff feels about it, but there is a fear. There's a fear in college sports of how is your fan base? How are the fans going to respond?
Which ties to money, right? I mean, that goes back to money, right? I mean, the people that hire you, I mean, the money is a big part of that.
It does.
Yeah.
No, fan base, donors, board of trustees, all these people. Like, you worry about those things.
Mm-hmm.
You absolutely do.
They're legitimate worries because, like Jeff said, the narrative can be hijacked.
Mm-hmm.
In these times when we're really dealing with evil roots, people will use them for their own personal political gain to change the narrative to win favor of the people they want to win favor of.
Yep.
And
well said.
That has not sat well with me. Because when the cap thing happened, look, we all had discussions with our guys, with our administration, with our school, and I feel bad because I feel like we missed an opportunity.
Yeah, I agree 100% with Steve, and I think it was, like he said, it was all out of fear. I mean, everything that he was protesting for, everything that he was doing and doing it peacefully is exactly what's going on right now. That's what he was protesting: police brutality, injustice, for Black people and Black men in general. And here in the past, 30 days, past month, you have these 3 incidents that have happened. And I think it was absolute fear. But like he said, the narrative was hijacked. Because of what he did, then it became about the flag. And that's what everyone wrote about, the media. He didn't like America. He was against the military. He was against that. And no matter how much he tried to explain that wasn't the case, that became the narrative. And I think that became the fear. If you do this, then you don't love America. You're unpatriotic. And so I do think an incredible opportunity was missed. But I think you have to learn from it. And we have to not make that mistake now. I think that one of the most important things right now is for us to understand. And I think, every program, every coach, especially in a team sport, you're constantly trying to get your guys to understand how much they need each other. And the really good programs and the really good teams understand that at an incredibly high level. Well, that's where we are right now. We need each other. Right. And we need to be connected. We need to listen. We need to we need to be open. We need to have these open conversations, these uncomfortable conversations, and we need to have it with an open mind. But we have to understand that we need each other in order to win this, thing that we're going through right now. Man, we really, really need each other. And sports, I think, is a unifier. I think sports always has been. I think our sport, basketball, has been such an incredible connector. I think it's played such a huge part in racial issues over the years. And we have a tremendous opportunity right now. And we have to be unified. We have to be thoughtful. And now there has to be action behind the words.
Well, that took the words right out of my mouth. So this is my last question, both of you. Right now, there's a ton of dialogue right now, social media, person to person, which I think is all positive. And hopefully that leads to more awareness and more empathy. But the next step needs to be action. And so on the micro level, within your team, what action items are there that you can take, or maybe you've already taken, to not just prepare these often Black men to come together as a team, but also for the realities that await them on your campuses, in your community, and as you prepare them to hopefully become leaders in those places?
Well, I think one of the first things is, like Steve has done, I know I've done it, I know a lot of coaches have done it, is that you have to have open conversations and dialogue. These kids have to understand they are more than student athletes. I think that's one of the biggest things. They have to understand and see themselves that way. One of the things that we did, and this is something we talked about on Monday, I asked my guys, how many of you guys vote?
Right.
How many of you guys are registered to vote? It was really interesting, Adam, because when I was a head coach before, at VCU in Oklahoma is something I talked about all the time with our guys. I never talk about who you should vote for or anything, but just understand your right to vote, and what power that does and what that can bring. I haven't done it since I've been here. I think I've been so wrapped up in trying to rebuild the program and doing these things, and I hadn't done it. None of our scholarship guys are registered to vote. Wow. And so that's an action item that we're doing. We've got all the information. We're getting our guys, and we're going to get our guys registered. I emailed our athletic director and our chancellor today about that's something as an athletic department that we should do. That's something as a university we should do. I talked to them about November 3rd, which is the voting day, for the national election. Is maybe we make that like a blackout day. I think it's on a Tuesday, and we use that day where everything is like there are no practices. It's an off day, and we use that day on the university level where we go and we exercise our right to vote. But then we do some things prior, with educating our guys on the voting process, how you do it and what it means and things like that. I think that's one action item that we all can do as a college athletic community.
Absolutely. Coach Wojo?
Yeah, in terms of my response as a leader and our response as the program, like I've kind of broken it up into three things. Acknowledgement was the first part of it. Awareness, whether it be through social media, whether it be through peaceful protests or education of the issues. And the third and the most important part is the one you guys just talked about, is action. After I get off this podcast, I have one of my guys I recruited to Duke who played football and basketball there, who spent time in the White House as President Obama's body man, a guy by the name of Reggie Love, speaking to our team on a number of issues, but certainly the issue of how to get involved in the political system to exercise, your ability to impact politically the change. And so we're also bringing together in more of a town hall format our current team and our past players to speak about our current environment and ways that we as a program to come together. And granted, I didn't coach most of those guys, but ways we can come together as a Marquette basketball family to be leaders in this time, to be a program that is one that impacts change, that develops leaders that will go out into their own communities and create the world that we all, I believe, want, or most of us want anyway.
Absolutely. Coaches, I can't thank you enough for your time and your perspective. You are, you both, I knew you both would be powerful speakers on this subject. You exceeded those expectations. I thank you both for not just the time, but for the leadership you've shown in this terrible time.
Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.